It was supposed to be just another glamorous awards night in Los Angeles red. Carpet rolled out, camera flashes lighting up the evening, and the usual swirl of celebrities mingling and exchanging polite smiles. Behind the glitz, there was the familiar undercurrent of political jabs, cleverly wrapped in jokes, a kind of dance everyone knew well. Nothing particularly out of the ordinary was expected. Then, Karoline Levitt appeared. She stepped onto the scene wearing a sleek, dark green gown that shimmered subtly under the ballroom lights. Around her neck hung a silver cross, a signature piece that seemed to define her a symbol of faith, resilience, and quiet strength. Karoline's posture was poised and confident, her head held high as she moved with the grace of someone who knew exactly who she was and what she stood for. But she wasn't alone. Walking steadily beside her was her husband, Daniel Whitmore, a former Marine. He wasn't a celebrity, nor did he seek the spotlight. Instead, his presence was the kind that commanded respect without a word, a quiet, steady force. Broad-shouldered, calm, and dignified, Daniel carried the aura of someone who had faced real challenges, someone who embodied discipline and honor. The press took notice immediately. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Who's that with Karoline? Her security?" "No, that's her husband Yvette, I think." The intrigue was genuine. This wasn't just another glamorous couple. This was something different, something real. Inside the ballroom, the chatter grew louder. Reporters jostled for the best angles, cameras captured every detail, and the anticipation for the night's program began to build. Everyone was eager to see the usual mix of speeches, performances, and of course, the inevitable political barbs disguised as jokes. But Karoline's presence shifted the energy. There was a sense that this night might not be as routine as everyone expected. With Daniel by her side, the message was clear. This wasn't just about glamour or fame. It was about standing tall, standing true, and being ready to face whatever came next. As the lights dimmed and the host, Tom Cruise, prepared to take the stage, the audience buzzed with anticipation. Little did they know, the evening was about to take a turn that no one saw coming. As the room settled into the rhythm of the evening, the spotlight shifted to Tom Cruise, night's host. Suave and polished, he stepped onto the stage with a confident smile, his voice cutting through the hum of the crowd. Tom had that kind of charm that could put people at ease, but beneath it was a sharp edge, one that had unsettled plenty before. "Ladies and gentlemen," Tom began, his grin widening, "we've got senators, stars, and even a few folks who still believe the earth is flat." The crowd laughed, the usual mix of amusement and polite applause filling the room. "And now," he continued, "here comes Karoline Levitt, America's favorite fire starter, strutting in with a husband who looks like he just wandered off a Marine recruitment poster." The crowd chuckled again, some with genuine amusement, others a bit more reserved. Daniel, standing tall beside Karoline, didn't smile, his jaw clenched slightly, eyes fixed ahead. Tom wasn't done. "Honestly, I thought that was her bodyguard, until I saw the wedding ring. She married him? Wow! Was Jason Bourne busy?" The laughter grew louder, a few whistles cutting through. The joke landed hard and cold. Karoline's face stayed calm, but carried an icy tension. She didn't flinch or respond immediately. But Daniel leaned in quietly and asked, "You okay?" She nodded firmly. "I'm fine." But he's not. The crowd's reaction varied. Some laughed nervously. Others watched quietly, sensing the mood had shifted. The camera panned over to their table. Karoline slowly placed her napkin down, stood up, and headed backstage with Daniel. The moment was brief but charged something unspoken hanging in the air. Tom, oblivious to the ripple he had just caused, continued hosting as if nothing had happened. His next jokes rolled out with practiced ease. But the energy in the room was different now. The casual digs, once met with lightheartedness, felt heavier. Behind the scenes, whispers began. Karoline's unexpected departure and Daniel's tight posture didn't go unnoticed. The room's usual levity gave way to a quiet anticipation, as if everyone was waiting to see what would come next. In that moment, the stage wasn't just a platform for entertainment. It was a battleground, a place where respect, honor, and personal boundaries were quietly but firmly being tested. The night had only just begun, and Tom Cruise's jokes had set in motion a chain of events no one could have predicted. Backstage, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Caroline Levitt, usually composed and measured, stood quietly for a moment, her eyes steady. Daniel Whitmore, her husband, stood by her side, his presence calm but unwavering. The chatter from the ballroom echoed faintly through the curtains. Tom Cruise, still unaware of what was about to unfold, was busy warming up the crowd for the next segment, but Karoline had made a decision. Without hesitation, she stepped back through the curtains and onto the stage. The sudden spotlight caught her unannounced appearance. The audience murmured in surprise. No one had expected Karoline to return so soon, especially not uninvited. Tom blinked, caught off guard. Karoline, what are you doing?" he asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Karoline didn't respond to him. Instead, she turned to face the crowd, her voice calm but resolute. "Since Tom brought me into the conversation," she began, "I figured it's only fair I respond." A ripple of nervous laughter passed through the audience, but her tone quickly silenced the room. "You know, it's easy to stand here and mock people who don't live in your world," Karoline said, her gaze steady. "But this isn't just about me. It's about my husband, a man who spent 10 years in the Marines, a man who faced real danger, not stage stunts or cameras." The weight of her words settled over the room. Even the usual clinking of champagne glasses seemed to hush. "When I walked in tonight," she continued, "I knew I wasn't your typical guest. I don't come from Hollywood. I come from a world of service, discipline, and respect values that aren't a punchline." She glanced briefly at Tom, whose confident smile had faded. "And as for the jokes comparing my husband to Jason Bourne," Karoline said with a faint, almost imperceptible smile, "that's cute. But trust me, Jason Bourne would have lost to this man in a second." Cheers and whistles erupted from the back of the room, where veterans and military supporters sat. A few audience members stood in applause, while others nodded with respect. Karoline allowed the applause to settle before delivering her final line. "Tom," she said, her voice clear and unwavering, "I don't need to be a movie star to command a stage. I just need to tell the truth." With that, she turned and walked off, leaving the spotlight flickering behind her. Backstage, Daniel waited patiently. "That was something," he said quietly. Karoline smiled, her eyes alight with determination. "Finally," she replied. "That was just the beginning." Back in the ballroom, Tom Cruise tried to regain control. The atmosphere was no longer lighthearted. It had shifted into something heavier, more charged. He paced nervously, like a lion trapped in a shrinking cage. His producers whispered urgently into his earpiece, "Let it go, Tom. Just move on with the script." But Tom wasn't wired that way. Karoline's unplanned speech landed like a powerful right hook. Social media cameras were already rolling, and the clips were going viral fast. People were sharing Karoline's words, especially her line, "I don't need to be a movie star to command a stage." It was spreading like wildfire. But Tom wasn't ready to back down. Adjusting his cuffs, he forced a grin and returned to the stage, attempting to brush off the moment with a joke. "Well, I guess I just got a lecture from the First Lady of Fox News," he said, smirking. Some laughed awkwardly. Others just watched, sensing something deeper beneath the surface. "Look," Tom continued, trying to sound reasonable, "I respect the troops, but let's not confuse being married to a Marine with knowing everything about leadership. There's a big difference between experience and ego." The comment landed with a thud, even his own table freezing in stunned silence. It wasn't bold, it was dumb. Behind the scenes, Daniel Whitmore had been quiet, absorbing everything. Now, a slow, calm fury took over him. "You good with me walking in there?" he asked Karoline quietly. She didn't answer, simply stepped aside. Seconds later, the double doors creaked open again. This time, it wasn't Karoline who emerged. It was Daniel Whitmore, 6'2", broad-shouldered, with a calm determination in every step. No rush, no apology, just presence. The audience turned in slow motion, eyes fixed on the man who walked straight down the center aisle. Tom Cruise looked up, blinking, in disbelief. "Can I say something?" Daniel asked, his voice steady but commanding. The microphone tech, caught off guard, handed him a live mic. Daniel faced the crowd, then looked directly at Tom. "You can joke all you want," he said, "but the moment you questioned her leadership, you made it personal. She earned her voice. You just act like you deserve yours. One sentence. One reaction. The entire front row gasped. Tom was speechless. Daniel nodded once, handed the microphone back, and walked out. No more words, but the message was loud and clear. It shook the room. By the time the awards show cut to commercial, Twitter, now known as X, was already ablaze. Hashtags like #Daniel did that, #Marine MC drop, and #sit down Tom were trending nationwide. Clips slowed down, remixed, replayed endlessly. A former Marine speaking not with anger, but with truth, and people listened. By the time the award show faded to commercial, the night's defining moments were already sparking a wildfire across social media. Twitter, now rebranded as X, erupted with hashtags trending nationally. #Daniel did that, #Marine MC drop, and #sit down Tom were on everyone's lips and feeds. Clips of Daniel Whitmore's calm walk to the stage and his sharp one-liner had gone viral within minutes. People slowed down the footage, replayed it, and remixed it countless times. It wasn't just the statement, it was the way he delivered it. Composed, respectful, yet utterly commanding. A former Marine standing up not with anger, but with undeniable truth. Mainstream media outlets quickly caught on. Fox News ran a segment titled, "Karoline Leavitt's Husband Shocks Hollywood with Silent Strength." But the story wasn't confined to conservative circles. CNN's Kyron reported, "Veteran confronts Tom Cruise. You just act like you deserve it." Even late-night hosts, usually quick to defend Tom Cruise, hesitated to speak out. Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel subtly acknowledged the moment, their usual humor replaced by a quiet respect. The morning after, Karoline's inbox overflowed with messages from supporters across the country, veterans groups, college students, journalists, and everyday Americans who had never reached out before. They all said the same thing. You didn't have to yell or fight dirty. You brought a man of honor to a room full of ego, and the truth spoke for itself. Meanwhile, Daniel remained grounded. He didn't check his phone once. Instead, he brewed coffee in the kitchen like it was just any other morning. Karoline, still in her robe, glanced over with a knowing smile. "You kind of blew up the internet last night," Daniel said quietly. "I didn't do anything but say the truth," Karoline replied. "That's exactly why it worked," Daniel nodded. Across town, Tom Cruise sat in his hotel room, watching the clips play over and over on his laptop. His name wasn't trending for his hosting skills, but for being put in his place. "That man is dangerous," Tom muttered, not about Daniel's military background, but about his influence. Tom's team scrambled to manage the fallout. Interns combed through social media, flagging the most damaging clips. Publicists rushed to pitch exclusive interviews to reshape the narrative. Suggestions flew. Frame it as humor gone wrong, call it a misunderstanding. But Tom was stubborn. "We don't apologize," he insisted. Yet deep down, Tom knew he was losing more than just screen time control. The public was witnessing something real, a couple who stood tall when others mocked, a story that didn't just entertain but inspired. And as the viral wave spread, it was clear this was only the beginning. While the buzz from the awards night continued to build across social media and news outlets, Tom Cruise's world was quietly unraveling behind the scenes. Frustrated and desperate to regain control of the narrative, he escalated the conflict in a way few had expected. He issued a legal threat. A sleek, unmarked envelope arrived at Karoline Leavitt's office at the White House press room. Inside was a formal notice of defamation, drafted with precise legal language. The letter accused Karoline and Daniel of causing reputational damage to Tom Cruise and demanded a public apology. Failure to comply, it warned, would lead to a lawsuit. Karoline, calm as ever, examined the document carefully. Daniel was nearby, sipping coffee, watching her with a steady gaze. "He's really going there," Daniel said quietly. Karoline smiled, not out of fear, but with sharp focus. "He picked the wrong opponent," she replied. The moment was tense, but charged with resolve. Instead of firing back on social media or rallying public opinion immediately, Karoline took a different approach. She opened an encrypted folder on her laptop, one she had kept ready for just such a moment. The folder was marked simply, Gibson, 19. Inside were emails, screenshots, and a detailed timeline from 2019 documenting Tom Cruise's abrupt withdrawal from a military charity event in Los Angeles. At that time, Cruise had promised to sponsor and attend, but backed out last minute without explanation. Karoline, then a junior congressional aide, had quietly collected evidence, but never made it public until now. "This isn't about revenge," Karoline whispered to Daniel. "It's about exposing a pattern. A man who humiliates those who serve and then hides behind his celebrity." By the next morning, Karoline's team drafted a clear, blistering public statement. It acknowledged the legal threat but declared no intimidation would silence the truth. "We have received Tom Cruise's legal threat," the statement read. "As someone dedicated to documenting truth, I am prepared to release full records of Mr. Cruise's behavior toward the military community. If he desires a public discussion, I am willing to meet him in court or on camera." The internet exploded. Veteran groups, moderate voices, and even some conservatives praised Karoline's courage. First-hand accounts surfaced from those who had been let down by Cruise in 2019, sharing stories of disappointment and broken promises. Meanwhile, Tom Cruise was caught in a crisis room, phone pressed to his ear as his PR manager scrambled to contain the fallout. "What does she have?" he barked, frustration clear in his voice. No one could answer. No one truly knew how far Karoline Leavitt was willing to go. The stage was darker than usual, as the spotlight shone on a single empty chair at the center of Fox News' primetime studio. A silver microphone stood ready. A single sheet of glassy paper lay beneath it, and beside it rested a flash drive marked simply, Gibson 19. Host Tucker Green introduced Karoline Leavitt with barely concealed anticipation. "Tonight, we welcome White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, not just for commentary, but to respond to a lawsuit threat from actor Tom Cruise." Karoline appeared calm, composed, no trace of bravado. She faced the cameras directly, her voice steady and clear. "I was legally threatened this week by a man who mocked my husband's service and then couldn't handle the public response. That man is Tom Cruise." The room fell silent. Every eye was glued to the screen. "But I've learned something in Washington," Karoline continued. "People who hide behind power rarely expect to be confronted with the truth." She slid the flash drive forward, allowing the world to see it. This file contains emails, memos, and direct communications from 2019 documenting Tom Cruise's sudden withdrawal from a veterans charity event that left over 100 service members without the promised funding or appearance. "This was no scheduling conflict," she said firmly. "It was a choice, and he never apologized." Tucker blinked, clearly taken aback by the depth of her evidence. Karoline looked directly into the camera. "You sued me, Mr. Cruise, claiming I damaged your reputation. But what I have here isn't hearsay, it's your own words." The audience was captivated, the magnitude of the moment settling in. "So, if this goes to court," Karoline declared, "I will bring this evidence with me. But if you want to drop the lawsuit, I'm open to a public apologia to the veterans you ghosted." The internet detonated once again. Conservative circles erupted in celebration, moderates leaned in with interest, and veterans shared personal stories corroborating her claims. "I was there in 2019, one veteran posted. "Karoline isn't lying. Cruise ghosted us." CNN and NBC couldn't ignore the story. Headlines shifted from gossip to serious reckoning. Tom Cruise's silence grew louder by the hour. His lawyer refused interviews. His publicist declined comment. His own social media accounts were eerily quiet. Meanwhile, Karoline stayed quiet but resolute. When reporters asked if she had seen support from figures like Keanu Reeves, she replied simply, "That took courage. I respect it deeply." Keanu's rare public statement calling out Tom Cruise only added fuel to the fire. "I attended that event. I saw the disappointment on those faces. Veterans deserve better." The story spread beyond politics and entertainment. It became a symbol of integrity over image, truth over power. Tom Cruise's team scrambled, desperate for a counter-narrative. But the tide had turned. Karoline Leavitt wasn't just fighting back, she was winning hearts. As Karoline Leavitt's story unfolded, the landscape of public opinion began to shift dramatically. The once protected image of Tom Cruise was now under siege, and his team scrambled desperately to regain control. Interns combed through social media posts, flagging the most damaging clips and comments. Public relations experts reached out to top-tier magazines like Vanity Fair and GQ, pitching exclusive interviews to help steer the narrative back in Cruz's favor. "We can frame this as a misunderstanding," one advisor suggested. Another offered, "Let's call it humor gone wrong." But Tom Cruise, stubborn and defensive, refused to back down. "No apologies. We hold the line," he insisted. Despite these efforts, the momentum was slipping through his fingers. Karoline's digital fortress of truth was too strong. She had meticulously prepared, anticipating the attacks. Her video montage featuring heartfelt testimonials from veterans and glowing staff reviews circulated widely. A retired general even released a public statement praising her integrity, saying, "Karoline Leavitt shows more honor in her pinky than most have in their entire careers." The public saw the contrast. A woman standing firmly with documented proof versus a man retreating behind PR damage control. Even some of Tom's longtime allies began to distance themselves. "She's not just fighting back," said a political commentator. "She's winning hearts." Keanu Reeves, whose rare public endorsement had already shaken Hollywood, reposted her video with 3 simple words: "This is integrity." Meanwhile, Tom Cruise watched from a hotel room, the frustration clear on his face as he stared at the looping video. "He was once the star who made America believe in heroes," Karoline mused privately. "But now, America has a new one, and she doesn't need a box office to prove it." The silence from Cruise's camp grew heavier by the day. No press conferences, no retractions, no apologies. Just quiet defeat. Karoline, meanwhile, remained focused but humble. Her mission wasn't personal glory. It was about standing for truth, respect, and those who serve. She often reflected on the moment that started it all, the awards night, where a simple joke became a catalyst for a larger reckoning. The power of standing tall, the power of speaking truth, and most importantly, the power of resilience. As the battle of narratives raged on, one thing was clear. Karoline Leavitt had rewritten the script. Weeks later, at the annual Veterans Honor Summit in Virginia, military families, retired generals, volunteers, and supporters gathered under one flag symbol of unity and respect. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation as Karoline Leavitt stepped onto the podium, dressed in a sharp navy blue blazer. The silver cross she wore around her neck caught the sunlight filtering through the windows, gleaming like a beacon. The crowd fell silent. Some expected a fiery victory speech filled with jabs at Hollywood or a pointed message toward Tom Cruise. But Karoline's words were different. They were powerful without bitterness, strong without anger. "A few weeks ago," she began, her voice steady, "someone with power mocked the man I love, and not just his service, but the values that define him." She paused, allowing the weight of her statement to settle. "And when we stood up, we weren't fighting for politics or applause. We were fighting for what too many people in this country are afraid to defend: honor, faith, and respect." The room erupted into applause, thunderous and heartfelt, but Karoline raised her hand gently, asking for quiet. "This isn't about one man," she said. "It never was. It's about every family that's been belittled for what they believe. Every wife who's been told she's too loud or too patriotic. Every veteran who's been forgotten when the cameras stopped rolling." Her words resonated deeply. Even some journalists, seated among the audience, wiped tears from their eyes. Daniel stood at the edge of the stage, arms folded, watching his wife stand taller than ever before. Then Karoline shared a letter from Keanu Reeves, which was read aloud by an aide. The message was simple but profound. Courage isn't always bullets or battlefields. Sometimes it's standing up with truth when the spotlight tries to blind you. The summit's media coverage painted Karoline not just as a political figure, but as a symbol of resilience and integrity. Headlines ran not about Tom Cruise, but about Karoline Leavitt ending the fight with grace and power. From lawsuit threats to national leadership, her journey became a blueprint for standing firm in the face of adversity. Back home, Karoline placed the now famous flash drive, the one that had ignited the fight, into a drawer. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. "I didn't win because I'm perfect," she told Daniel quietly. "I won because I refused to be silent." "Some people think fame protects you," she said. "But today, we saw that truth speaks louder even to the loudest voices in Hollywood." Karoline hadn't just fought back. She had rewritten the script. And for millions watching, that was the real victory. The story of Karoline Leavitt and Daniel Whitmore didn't just end with a powerful speech or viral moments. It sparked a movement, a reminder that standing up for what's right is never easy, but always necessary. In the days following the Veterans Honor Summit, social media was alive with conversations. People shared their own stories of respect, honor, and resilience. The hashtags that once focused on a single event began to symbolize something larger. Number Truth Speaks, number Honor Over Hype, number Stand with Karoline. Karoline and Daniel became more than a couple caught in a public clash. They became a symbol of quiet strength, a beacon for those who believe in dignity over drama. Invitations poured in from across the country. News programs, universities, veterans organizations, and community groups all wanted to hear their story, how truth and courage can rewrite narratives. One evening, before a nationally televised interview, Karoline turned to Daniel and asked, "Are you sure you want to do this? The spotlight can be harsh." Daniel shrugged with a small smile. "Not a fan of the spotlight, but if it helps people stand up, then count me in." Their appearances were marked not by grandstanding, but by honest conversations about service, sacrifice, and the power of respect. They spoke not just to the media, but to people who felt overlooked and unheard. Meanwhile, Tom Cruise's name faded from the headlines, replaced by discussions about integrity and accountability. The public had moved on, inspired by those who stood firm without shouting. Behind the scenes, Karoline continued her work with a renewed sense of purpose. She focused on policy, community engagement, and veterans affairs, making sure that the voices behind the headlines translated into real change. Daniel returned to his quieter life, but remained a steadfast supporter, always ready to remind Karoline and others that courage isn't about noise, it's about persistence. The story, once sparked by a sharp joke on an awards night, had grown into a testament to the power of standing tall, speaking truth, and refusing to be silenced. Karoline often reflected on those moments, the walk onto the stage, the viral clips, the legal threats, not with bitterness, but with gratitude. Because those moments showed her and everyone watching that no spotlight is too bright for truth. And that sometimes, the beginning of a story is just the start of something far greater.